Hi guys, so this is my presentation on is it constitutional to prominently display the Ten Commandments in public buildings like courthouses, or is that establishing a state religion? Give your opinion and back it up by facts and actual cases. So, in my opinion, uh, it is constitutional to prominently display the Ten Commandments in public buildings such as courthouses, and I don't actually think it's establishing a religion. Many different religions use the Ten Commandments. If you were to just like spontaneously make up certain commandments, like "Thou shalt not hate the president," that could be considered like a religious thingy. Um, but no, the Ten Commandments. I mean, Catholics use it, Protestants, Baptists, Jews, Mormons, and even Muslims use a form of the Ten Commandments. Um, so displaying them isn't suddenly establishing a state religion. I mean, many people use them. And on top of this, we use religious phrases and religious symbols all the time in our government. We reference God and a creator, and we make a lot of references to just religion in general. On every single dollar bill, we have "In God We Trust." So just saying "In God We Trust." That's not establishing a religion. That's, I mean, no, I don't think that's the same. Um, and I think the same applies to the Ten Commandments. A lot of people believe in the Ten Commandments, so it's not really establishing a state religion, um, just to have them out in public view. So the Supreme Court has addressed this many times since 1980, and the results are kind of inconclusive and fairly arbitrary. I guess it just kind of comes down to which judges hear which case. So way back in 1980, they reviewed a Kentucky case where the Kentucky law required public schools to display the Ten Commandments in the classroom. And the court ruled that that's the Kentucky law was government sponsorship of a religion and was therefore unconstitutional. According to the law violated the First Amendment's Establishment Clause, and that prohibits government from establishing or favoring a religion over another one. Or even more, from favoring religion over non-religion. 4 years later, the court took up a case that involved, holiday displays, holiday symbols, and holiday sayings and stuff. And in that case, the court ruled that a Christmas nativity scene that was put up in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, was constitutionally acceptable because there was a bunch of secular symbols next to the nativity scene. So apparently, having the secularness next to the religiousness does not constitute establishing a religion. However, since that, there were two decisions later where, there were decisions later where there were just unpredictable rulings, approving of some religious displays and disapproving of other displays. For instance, 5 years after the Pawtucket nativity scene, so 1989, the Supreme Court ruled that a nativity scene on the staircase of a Pittsburgh courthouse was unconstitutional. Um, and unlike the situation in Pawtucket, there were no secular symbols around it. So somehow that was government endorsement of religion. So in 2005, the court ruled that two cases displaying the Ten Commandments, uh, there were two cases where they decided, for the first one, they decided that the relatively recent placement of the Ten Commandments in the courthouses in Kentucky violated the Establishment Clause because a reasonable observer would conclude that the counties intended to highlight the religious nature of certain documents and the law and stuff. But in the other case, the court ruled that the display of the Ten Commandments, that was, in Texas, did not violate the Establishment Clause. And for some reason, they felt that if you were just a random onlooker, you wouldn't feel like the government was supporting religion. And so really, it doesn't make much sense, their rulings, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. With the display cases, it's like, well, if you have the display case alone with the religious symbol, it's government endorsement. If you have it with a secular symbol alongside it, for some reason, the original symbol no longer becomes, important in the factor. And then, with the Ten Commandments, you put it up recently, and suddenly your government is supporting religion, and it's deeply involved. But then you go over to Texas, and the exact opposite is true. So really, the takeaway is it's all dependent on what your judges think, and so there's no really set rules to it, no rhyme or reason really about it. And it's just kind of interesting like that. So if you want to put up these kinds of things in a public place, it's kind of dependent on the state you're in, kind of dependent on the judges that are currently in office, kind of dependent on how people take it. But I personally think it is constitutional to put it up. And yeah, this concludes my presentation on whether or not it is constitutional to display religious symbols like the Ten Commandments in public buildings.